Valeria, please welcome on stage. She's gonna talk, guide us through inclusive design, please.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen, and good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone from sunny London. I'm not sure you're able to see my screen. I guess if no one is saying anything, everybody can see my screen. So hello, it's great to be back today. Thank you so much for the invite. I'm really happy to spend the next 20 minutes introducing inclusive design and how we use it at Idean in the UK. My name is Valeria Adani. I'm a service design director at Idean UK. Idean is a global organization, part of Capgemini, and what we do in our day-to-day world is to help bold organizations to stay ahead. As you can see from the screen, we work with big, small organizations, but what we do is to help them design something new or reinvent what they have. How we do it is to combine design, business, and technology together to create products and services that are good for the people, that put the user at the center, but also that keep an eye on the planet and the environment where we live in. Our team is very diverse, a number of different approaches and methodologies. I am part of the service design team, but I usually work with my colleagues from the product design team, business design, product management, and we also have a team of technologists. But enough with the introductions. I'm gonna just jump straight into the topic of today's keynote. In the next 20 minutes, I'm gonna try to cover these 3 topics. An introduction to inclusive design, what is it and why is it important? An overview of some of our inclusive design tools that we use at Idean that are available and can be embedded in your ways of working as well. And last but not least, why is it important to get inclusive design prioritized and how to do it? So without further ado, let's start from introducing inclusive design. So let's start with the definition. Inclusive design is the design of mainstream products and services that are accessible, usable, enjoyable by as many as reasonable people possible. But what we want to underline every time we talk about inclusive design is not just a checklist exercise, it's not just a set of standards, but it's a mindset. It's a whole design mindset that aims to consider the widest possible range of voices in the design process, in the whole design process from ideation all the way to testing and implementation. People with impairments, the reality is that people with impairments around the world are not a small minority. 15% of the world's population live with some form of disability. Just to have an overview of some of the UK statistics, 7 million people of working age in the UK have a disability, and 45% of adults over state pension in the UK are disabled. And if we look into even more specifically on some of these impairments, we have a big part of the population in the UK, these are statistics related to the UK, just as an example, that have sight impairments or issues with, for example, arthritis, 1.5 million with learning disabilities, 12 million, this is a massive number of people with hearing loss, 6 million with dyslexia, and this we're only referring to numbers of people that have a chronic impairment. And then there are lots of people that have maybe temporary or situational impairment. And what do we mean with situational or temporary impairment? I'll just give you a couple of examples. The reality is that everyone experiences temporary impairment at some point in their life. I'm sure some of us have stumbled on the stairs because their hands were full with packages and stuff, and you couldn't hold the railing. Or have you ever missed your tube stop of your bus stop because you were not aware of the context, you were listening to music, your hearing sense was not activated? Or have you ever tried, and I'm sure this is lots of us, have you ever tried to work from home during a pandemic with a small child in the house trying to grab your attention? All of these are examples of temporary or situational impairment where we are not able to use our senses at their 100%. So when we mean and we talk about designing inclusively, it means that we are trying to benefit the majority of the user, not just the minority, not just the people that are officially, let's say, officially have an impairment, but lots of people like us that might have situation of impairments during their journeys. And when we talk about inclusive design, though, we can't just focus on physical or mental impairments. That's just one part of it, or just accessibility. There's just one part. What inclusive design wants to do is foster a sense of belonging and inclusion for the user to really make them feel that they're understood from the service and the product they use. So to be truly inclusive, we need to consider that the needs of people from all different groups in different combination. No user is just disabled or non-binary or Asian. Every of us, every person is a combination of different elements, and we need to take in consideration all this limited combination when we try to design for the majority of people. So through our experience in designing inclusively, we came up with like 4 key steps that we think are fundamental in order to design inclusive products and services. First of all is embedding an inclusive mindset in your team. It's important that you educate and educate your peers, your team, your colleagues. I'm looking at the partners in the call as well, that have an understanding of what inclusive design is and why is it important. This is how we're doing it in Idean. We make sure that everybody has access to inclusive tools, and we are delivering extensive training to make sure that all our designers and technologists have an understanding of inclusive design. Second pillar or step to designing inclusively is really about building empathy with a truly representative group of users and customers. And that should be the widest representative group as possible. An example for this is just creating a set of personas that is not just the typical set of personas, but takes in consideration disabilities, impairments. And I'm going to show you a couple of tricks to do this. Another example is to make sure that when you recruit for user testing, you're not just recruiting obvious user, but you also make sure that you recruit an inclusive, a diverse set of people to make sure that you're taking in consideration different perspectives. The third key step for designing inclusively, it's all about designing with your user, not just testing with them, but really bringing them on the journey as much as possible. And this is why we think it's important that design teams are diverse and inclusive themselves. And as a global company as Idean, we're really putting a lot of effort to make sure that our design teams represents our users as well. And last but not least, of these 4 key steps to designing inclusively, it's making sure that we revisit continuously, learn, iterate, and update our designs, our services and products to make sure that we keep up with the latest technology, the latest changing, and to make sure that no new tech innovation or product or service innovation leave anyone behind. So make sure that continuous iteration is taken in consideration also when it comes to inclusion. So I just wanted to give a bit of an overview of how we are embedding an inclusive design mindset in Idean. And my wonderful computer is about to die, but I'm going to make sure that that doesn't happen. So the first tool that I want to talk about is a tool that we developed in the past few years, and it's called Cards for Humanity. It takes inspiration from a famous game, Cards Against Humanity. But in this case, we developed this set of cards. Initially, it was a physical set of cards, and then with the pandemic, we had to turn it into a digital set of cards that helps designers and different stakeholders involved in designing new products and services to take in consideration different perspectives, and making sure that everyone, or the biggest majority of users, can enjoy and use different products and services. We recently won a design award for this tool, and you can access it and use it at the website on the slide. But just to give you an overview of what it is, usually the best way is to have a scenario, and then you're given a set of cards that are randomly proposing you with different needs and different possible impairments or different possible characteristics of your potential user. And then on the other side, there are some tips on what to consider to design inclusively for these profiles. The way we use Cards for Humanity is to test new proposition from the beginning, to generate new ideas that are a great tool for brainstorming. They're really good to raise awareness around inclusive design in teams and organizations. We run multiple workshops for our clients around this, and really like opening up their eyes on why it is important to design inclusively. We use them to create design principles, to really create design principles that are inclusive at scale. And last but not least, we also use Cards for Humanity to test and QA new product and services to make sure that we are keeping the inclusive design perspective at the center. Another tool that we recently developed to help us keep inclusive design at the center of the way we work is Universal Score. Again, this is open and available to everyone at the website that you see here. But this is a score system that we developed to evaluate how inclusive and how a product or service can foster a sense of belonging. It helps teams evaluate 5 areas of inclusivity: belonging, mental well-being, physical needs, neurodiversity, and user centricity. And it helps evaluate existing or new products. I'm going to give you some of the example of this questions we have. This is one of the questions around belonging. It is really pushing teams to understand how to push and to bring inclusive design at the center. This question, for example, is about how much the imagery that is used to represent target user is representative of the real target user. Is it only representing a certain type of population, only young people or old people, and making sure that, for example, the imagery it's representative of the user. And then at the end of this 25 question, you get a score and some let's say tips on how to be more inclusive. The way we use Universal Score is to test existing or new products. Something that we've done recently is to evaluate the biggest UK supermarket chains and how their online journeys are, if they are inclusive or not. And we are getting in touch with the different supermarkets to let them know what they could do better. We use them to test proposition, to test new products, and to raise awareness. Something that we've done, for example, recently for our client, British Gas, is to use Universal Score to test one of the key journeys. And yeah, just wanted to present some of the examples of the work we've done. So for British Gas, that is the biggest provider of utility services in the UK, we've been working with them in really testing some of the key journeys to make sure that they are inclusive and they take in consideration the most vulnerable customers. When it comes to water, electricity, heating, vulnerable customers are really important for our client. So for example, through analytics, we were able to find hard to use journey, which could be easily be removed for cost reasons, But thanks to our inclusive design approach, we were able to identify how that journey specifically was really critical for carers of people, of vulnerable customer. So we kept the functionality while live to make sure that this vulnerable customer were not left behind, and making sure that the journey was simplified and easier to be accessed by everyone. Centrica, that is the parent company of British Gas, we've been working with them almost 3 years now, and we keep working with them and with designers with impairments and disability. We partner with organizations like RNIB and MenCap to ensure that all our user testing include participants who have access needs. For companies like British Gas, this is really important, and we were really happy to help them in this journey. And then just to conclude for the last 5 minutes, and I'm sorry if this has been just like literally a sneak peek in what inclusive design could be, it's how to get inclusive design prioritized. Inclusive design, unfortunately, is still seen as a nice to have, but the reality is that it's a huge market. What it's called the purple pound in the UK, it's worth approximately more than 200 billion only in the UK, just to give you an idea of a country like the UK. That's a lot of spending power that is missed out if we do design inclusively. And this is building the business case for inclusive design has been our mission for the last 18 months. But it's still seen as an add-on, a nice to have, something that we'll get around later. So I wanted to give you like a few tips on how to prioritize inclusive design, because most of the people don't think it's important in organizations. The first excuse that we always hear is this one. Oh, we can fix this later. Let's just launch the product or the service now. Who cares? I'm sure you heard this before. The reality is that fixing things later and tackling inclusive or accessible design later can cost way more money and time than tackling it from the beginning. So this is a quote from the Design Council report. Changes after a release, it can cost 10,000 times more than changes made during conceptual design. So why not including inclusivity and belonging from the beginning and reduce the risk of increasing costs later on? Another excuse that we hear all the time is that we don't have the budget for that. You know, it's not important. We don't have the money. The reality is that you don't have the budget, but can you afford not to? Very often, organizations that don't design inclusively, they think that it costs more if they do. But the reality is that 75% of the disabled peoples, their families, their carers have left a shop or a business because of poor customer experience or lack of disability awareness. This is a massive loss and also a massive potential reputational damage. So can you actually afford not to take in consideration people with potential temporary, situational or chronic impairments? And last but not least, you heard this many times. Oh, but you know, people with impairments are not our user groups. We're not looking at them. But as I said at the beginning, the reality is that it's not your target user yet. 34% of the UK adult population have an impairment at any given time. The population across the globe is getting older. Longer life expectation, aging population, that means that impairments and disabilities in the future will be more and more common. So if we're looking at 34% now, that is 1/3 of the UK population, for example. It's a massive target group that we are missing out at the moment. So inclusive design, at the end of it, will help us design a better world. We cannot wait for others to give us permission to do it. We need to start. So what I want to leave you today is one provocation, one question. What is the one thing you, SUGAR students, partners, what is the one thing you will try in the next week to embed a more inclusive design in your practice? That said, I'm done with my keynotes. I'm aware it was really quick and very condensed. So if you have any questions, please write me an email, add me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. You can find me in any social media, and we can continue the conversation. Thanks again, Sugar, and I hand over to Mario or Alice.
Thank you very much, Valeria. It was really inspiring to talk about inclusive design, and thanks a lot for the great tools you shared during your presentation. I think we maybe have 1 or 2 minutes for some question, and I can see one in the chat. So it's Leona who said, is finding truly representative users more difficult when trying to design inclusively?
This is a great question. So it takes a little bit more time, that's for sure. But if you start building that muscle and that awareness, the things get simpler and better and easier. There are lots of different associations that you can rely on, as long as you engage them in an equal manner. This is really important. Like very often, like we tend to say, okay, we can rely on this association or this NGO, etc. But it's important that we pay for their time, and we just don't hope that they do it for free. It's important to engage them in the right way. But definitely, it takes a little bit longer. But we hope that that will become mainstream, so it will not be that hard anymore.
Okay, thank you very much. And Leonard is saying thank you as well. Okay, I think we are going to move on to the team's presentation. Thanks again, Valeria. It was really nice to have you with us today.